Oh, we could do a whole series on this. So the question is from Homemade Theology. Good to have you here, Homemade Theology. It says, hello, do you believe that Scripture talks about Christ's second coming? Thank you for what you do. Well, you're welcome. Yes, I absolutely believe Scripture talks about Jesus' second coming. What I don't believe is that every Scripture that people say are about the second coming are necessarily about the second coming. The big example for me personally, I don't think Jesus in the Olivet Discourse, which is in Matthew and in Mark, where he's talking about the coming of the Son of Man, when his disciples ask him, when are these things going to happen? What's going to be the sign of your coming? I don't think that is talking about the second coming, because his disciples didn't think he was going anywhere. When they asked about the coming, naturally, they would have been thinking about the context of Daniel 7, the coming of the Son of Man before the Ancient of Days to receive authority. I think they were asking about, hey, when are you going to basically inaugurate your reign? And Jesus takes that question and he basically lays out what's going to happen to Jerusalem that kind of completely turns all of their expectations on its head. So in that instance, I don't think Scripture is talking about the second coming. And a lot of people go right there and read that into it. But I'm not a full preterist. I do think Scripture does talk about the second coming. I think that when the Thessalonians, the passage that people think is about the rapture, I actually think that's about Jesus's return and the resurrection of believers. And I think Revelation obviously talks about Jesus's return around chapters 18, 19, 20. So definitely believe the second coming. I don't take a dispensational view of many of the passages. So for more on that, if you're interested,
Jam.
Go ahead, Gregory. Let me give a quick plug. If you're interested in more on that, like way more, go to discipledojo.org/podcast. It's on our website, and we have an entire series called Apocalypse Now. It's only audio. We don't have it on YouTube, but it's what the Bible teaches about the end times, and we go deep. It's 10 one-hour sessions that are all about end times eschatology stuff. Greg, what were you going to say?
Just super brief. Explain the term dispensationalism. It comes up a lot when we're talking about end times. What is it? Because I think it's a popularized concept that's out there that maybe a lot of people don't understand what the term actually means.
Yeah, it's a theological way of reading the Bible that breaks up history into these self-contained segments of time called dispensations. And in each dispensation, God judges humanity based on different criteria. And we are currently in the dispensation of grace. And then that, in this way of reading the Bible, that will end when the church is raptured out of the world, and then other stuff happens, and that is where dispensationalists start to kind of splinter among themselves. Premillennial, pre-wrath, post-wrath, mid-trib, it's more than we can get into now. But if you're interested in knowing more about it, check out that course, Apocalypse Now, the podcast. We talk all about it, and we give a good working overview of it, and we don't take a really hard position on either one. I just try to present the views and say, now let's read Scripture in light of these competing hermeneutics, and people can decide where they land. Mo Ortiz, did Paul teach a rapture in 1 Thessalonians? No, he did not. He taught an apantesis. He taught that we would be harpazo, that we would be caught up in the apantesis. If you want to know what that means, check out the video here on the channel. We have two. We have one where boring old me teaches it, looking at the biblical text on the screen. And then we have one where Son Goku from Dragon Ball Z teaches it in our superhero seminary series. But no, Paul did not teach what is commonly thought of as the rapture. He taught the second coming and the resurrection of the dead and the going to meet our returning king in the air, because he's not returning from a foreign country. He's returning from being seated at the right hand of God the Father to welcome him into his kingdom forever. The other charts and dispensational stuff.
That scripture, that 1 Thessalonians, the rapture, is handled really, 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 really well at an easy to understand level by a really highly respected scholar that you've had here on the channel. It's really covered well. It's a part of a chapter, so it's probably 5 pages long in Matt Halstead's The End of the World as You Know It.
Yep. Matt has a great discussion on that. Entry level, gets you right into it.
Easy to understand.
Yes. And we also look at it in the podcast here, Apocalypse Now, on the Disciple Dojo podcast. We look at that in one of the sessions is on Paul and the end times. And so we jump on that as well.